Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the National Training and Simulation Association's annual iFest show in Northern Virginia, and we have with us Dean Pianta, who is with Adobe Systems Federal. You're a solutions manager. We're at this training and simulation conference, and I can't tell you the number of people who've told me, like, did you talk to Dean? You have to talk to Dean. So we are talking to Dean. I want to talk to you first. When people have a tendency of thinking about Adobe, they have they think of PDFs, they think of Flash, which we've discussed, and Steve Jobs' the late Steve Jobs' absolute love of Flash, and then going back to Macromedia, which is a little bit of a blast from the past. Tell us, how you guys got into the training and simulation space, and what is it that you do there for those folks who don't necessarily know what Adobe does, seeing as how what you're doing actually ties into what a lot of other people are doing in the training and simulation space.
It's a great question, especially there will be a segment of people here that understand we've been in the e-learning space for 25 plus years. Adobe Captivate, formerly RoboDemo, that's a key aspect of almost every single agency we talk to. How do we author content? But we're here today more talking about Adobe Experience Manager. This is a system, a platform that's been transforming, disrupting the retail space, if you will, marketing and even advertising. It's all about how we make, manage, and measure content. So when we talk about PDF and maybe some of the creative products, everyone knows we do Photoshop as well. That's where I get a lot of questions. We have to make sure they understand over the last 5 years, we realized we were the king of industry in terms of creating content like that. But the CEO started to ask the question, is it effective content? How do we put this content into action, and then more importantly, measure the effectiveness? So that management of and measurement of became huge pieces. Over the last 3 years, with the e-learning background that I had, I just listened to everything we were doing, transforming this marketing world, and said, God, this is e-learning. How do we make, manage, and measure the effectiveness of content speaks to ultimately mission capability and readiness. The more we say this, I believe we're out of our traditional lane that people understand us for. However, the PhDs in this audience, they see the mapping directly. They see the customer journey as a true parallel to the e-learning journey.
Your presentation was a lot about how training has to change. That how, the technology is changing, how we have to change. What do you mean by that? And what are the ways, in your estimation, does training have to change? You were a trainer, you trained a lot of Marine Corps troops, you've deployed with them. Talk to us a little bit about that vision of how training has to change.
And it should be understood, we look at certain areas of training, certain training domains where the known is not well understood. If we can package training into a nice little package, send it off and deliver it like a can of Coke, that's not the type of training I'm talking about. I'm talking about groups that we work with, like in the Navy, explosive ordnance disposal. How we encounter IEDs in the field can't be trained, in Destin, Florida. Now they can learn all the basics, but as we emerge from a classroom environment like that, how do we stay in sync? How do we bring and capture knowledge in the field and bring it back into the institution and with our peers? So when I say change, if you witness a fourth grader, fifth grader, teenager right now, how they handle social media is very interesting. How they actually have value in peer interactions more so than a subject matter expert or instructor. If we recognize how fourth graders work, I think we can build systems that they want to use. But the whole thing does revolve around social learning, and those are constructs that need to be brought into the space. How do we interact as teams? Because at the end of the day, I don't think we're training individuals, we're training teams. High performers need to stay in that team and contribute back to all the learning content. So I think it's understood by many, but some are still very hesitant to give a voice to a learner and have a dialogue in an open format. So of course we're going to moderate everything, but can we open a conversation with learners as a larger community, curate information that they might create, and together we succeed.
Do you sense, what are going to be the big breakthroughs, when Major General Deal was here from the Joint Staff, as well as Kim Peretti, who is from your organization, and you guys are gold sponsors of this. We should say of this event, which is truly a fascinating event for all the conversations and how folks are thinking about this changing space. And that was really the most interesting thing, is everybody's acknowledgement that you don't even know what in 36 months this space is going to look like. I don't think that's true for almost any other segment, but it is true here. What are some of the changes? What are the big things that are happening? And where do you think
Yeah.
we're going to be in 36 months, which in a federal acquisition standpoint
Yeah.
is like the blink of an eye,
Yeah.
right? Given that it takes significantly longer to acquire stuff. So talk to us a little bit about where we are now, what the key enablers are going to be, and what it's going to look like in the future.
It's actually one area where I think Adobe has an advantage somewhat. Yes, we're all waiting for the big data with artificial intelligence to really impact the segment. Do we think about AI being an instructor to teach, or more importantly, AI being the evaluator? AI assistants to help manage through all this data, petabytes of data that we're going to start collecting on experiences. That's far off, but those are directions that we're headed to. What is interesting about Adobe, though, as I mentioned, the transformation and disruption of retail and advertising has created what I call a crystal ball that we've been taking pieces out of and exposing to the e-learning community. I believe that segment actually is farther ahead. And they're not even ready for all the stuff that Adobe has for the retail market. Things like relevance engines, how we market technology but then recommend other things. If you think about certain sites you hit to say, hey, you purchased this or you watched this, and they tell you you might like this as well, based on your peers and who you are and the segment we've put you in. These are things that are well understood in a $1 trillion market that I think we can bring to this $1 billion market, which is big, but there's some more advancements, I think, in marketing and advertising.
What do you think? Each of the services is trying to change the way that they think about training. We talked to Jordan Thomas. You guys are partnered with them on Community Force on what they're doing with the Air Education and Training Command. Each one of the services wants to change. There was a presentation in there in the poetry slam version of the sort of the 5-minute speed briefs from each of the ignites, and we heard from top Army. About how the Army is changing, about how it's teaching. What do you see as being some of the key change trends that we're going to see in terms of how people are changing how they think about training?
So many ways to answer that, but I want to answer along the line of being a CIO. I think it's brilliant with the cloud adoption we've had across industries and now in government. AETC taking a huge shift towards cloud computing and certainly conforming to FedRAMP or DoD SRG. But in this sense, as an infrastructure, we start to realize we don't need to buy hardware in that sense. Let's leverage the big cloud providers. One level up from that at a platform level, I also embrace AETC for understanding, it is a platform. This same platform can power their websites, their mobile apps, their publications, every experience you can have with the Air Force, for that matter. Do we need to buy e-learning specific tools anymore, or can we start to enjoy the entire enterprise IT infrastructure? I think that's a huge enabler towards all the e-learning. There's other aspects, but that one I think is very key.
Dean, thanks very much. We appreciate it. And as you guys have more information and more interesting stuff to talk about, we'd love to talk to you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.